Well, Chidi, would it be right then to say that the power of the youth in Nigeria is social media?
Oh, no, no. The power of the youth in Nigeria is extended by social media.
Exactly.
It's the power of the young, the power of youth stands one in first sheer numbers, which is a demographic blessing, so as it were, for the continent. That's one. The power of the youth stands in sheer positioning, which means that they are the primary stakeholder in the Nigeria that is evolving. Any group of young people, young voters, are the most important beneficiaries or sufferers of whatever government action or inaction happens in the immediate. Because, you know, I mean, first, they were not parts of they're not culpable for the situation in which they find themselves. I say if you were born in the past 20 years, they're not culpable in the Nigeria that you had. But then you don't have the resources, so to speak, to affect those outcomes as much as people of other age groups have. So you are front and center of the reality of your country at that time. And because of that, your influence, the fact that you are the main test case, so, as it were, means that you become very important to the conversation. So social media is simply an extension of that conversation that young people have in the schools every day, in the stadia every day, in the township halls, at Mapo Hall, at, you know, on the roads in Iseluku, you know, in the market square in Ikare-Ekiti and all these places. Young people are constantly having conversations about the actions or inactions of government. What social media has done is that either amplified and or extended that reach. It's not limited at all. It's just the one place where you can find the hashtag that coordinates all the conversation. But if you put if you could find a hashtag for the streets, you'll find out that young people are having these same conversations in the Chateau.
The conversations now, yes, they're having the conversations about the activities of government, the activities of the older generation. What about their role in all of this? Are there conversations about their role in all of this?
The conversation is both a means to an end,
because
and an end in itself.
What you find most times on social media is they did this, they did that, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. So what about I didn't do this, or we are not doing this, or we are not doing that?
So the first thing is that your role as a citizen is to loudly demand good governance. And loudly denounce bad governance, whether you are saying it on the streets or on social media. So if young people are saying, you didn't do this, then they're already performing their roles as citizens in the democratic process. And I think it's important because people come on social media and say, you know, you are just talking. Well, it's not just talk, it is talk. It's not, talk is important. Conversations
there's talk and there's talk.
Yes, sensitization is important. Engagement in the process requires vocal participation. So that in itself is a sign of progress, is a sign of an engaged citizenry, is a sign that people are interested. I always say that it is better to be children of anger than to be children of apathy. And so that already serves that purpose. Now, secondly, what are they doing? We must remember that the conversation is about bad governance. And bad governance goes down to bad government or good government. And therefore, the focus is on those who have been elected or appointed to take care of the public interest. And so moving the attention from the offender, from the rapist, as it were, to the victim, is another in the long line of victim blaming. You know, the citizen has a legitimate right to put their attention on the person who is paid or elected to ensure the public good. And so when those people begin to say, what are you doing? They are missing the point. I can decide to do something else in addition to being an active citizen, but it is not my duty. However, as a government official, it is your duty.
That's what you get paid to do.
That's what you get paid to do. So in that respect, in those two respects, citizens are doing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Yemi?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's an easy cop-out when we have these conversations around the fact that people are just talking. But at the end of the day, also, I think part of what Trudy had also said is also realizing the transition in Nigeria's sort of governance process. So we're, 16 years into a democracy. We haven't always had the luxury of being able to talk. So it's also taking people getting used to having this whole conversation around, okay, my opinions do matter, I can speak. And then watching that evolve into actions and elected officials then having to set up and respond. And then people getting used to, okay, if I talk, they respond, they have a duty to respond. And it's a whole cycle, but it's a process and we're learning. But talking in and of itself is absolutely essential. And by pushing it back to citizens, as Trudy clearly said, and I keep saying this all the time, anyone who's an elected or an appointed official, that is your job. That is what the public service is. That is what you wake up in the morning to do. That is why I, as a taxpayer, or I, as a citizen, that's what I pay you to do. So first point of call, if you say you're not doing this well because you actually, it's clear, it's that you're going against the Constitution or you're doing things, that's enough. I shouldn't have to do anything else. The next thing I get to do is every 4 years I get to vote you in or out. And then if I now want to do any other thing, either run for office or consult or write or whatever it is I want to do, it's extra. But the fact that I'm talking and constructively criticizing along your job description, so it's basically saying this is your job description, and you're not doing it. What else do you want me to do?
Now, that issue of along job description, along
Right.
the line of job description, that might also raise another question, the question of how much of research do the youth put into this discussions they're having? I mean, the youth sometimes just go on social media, 2 days talking about Yemi not handling her iPad well, and they take it up and they're running with it. How much of research do they, or how much attention do they pay to that conversation that 2 days started before jumping into the conversation?
I mean, two things I would say when we're talking about sort of research. I think part of it is not blaming citizens. Our curriculum plays very little attention on civics and citizens understanding basically governance 101.
So we're taking it back to the government.
No, but really true. And it's also, if there's a deliberate attempt, and if I understand it correctly, there have been attempts to make studying the Constitution or making sort of history and Nigerian government a mandatory course, and that's always failed, passing through the National Assembly. But it's extremely important. In some countries, by the time you're like 7, you understand your history, you understand your first commandment or first amendment, whatever the things of your Constitution are. But most of us in Nigeria, we don't. So a lot of the things that we know, we pick up in pieces, not because we've been formally taught or understand what I would call governance 101 or the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. We pick up a bit here, pick up a bit here, pick up a bit there. So there's a lot of responsibility still placed on the citizen. Now, do people do enough research? Maybe not, but they still do. And the speed of social media sometimes doesn't even lend itself to you, because sometimes you take an influencer. So if you take Trudy, for example, there's some people on social media you just think they should know what they're talking about. So you give them that benefit of that. Like when I watch you on news, I assume you know what you're talking about. So it doesn't mean you're 100% right all the time, but people tend to do that and then just sort of run with the information that's before them.
Okay, yeah. There's someone I think I'd want us to listen to, the senior special assistant to the president on youth affairs. I want us to listen to what he had to say about the youth and the elections, and then we'll come back and continue our conversations. If we could just have that film of the senior special assistant to the president on youth affairs.
Nigeria belongs to every one of us, and therefore anybody, any age bracket, use us as agents of electoral tools, use us as agents of political destabilization, use us as agents of disunity, and above it all, use us as agents of separation and neglection.
Okay, that was the senior special assistant to the president on youth affairs, talking about the fact that Nigeria belongs to every one of us, and he says use us as agents of change. How ready is the Nigerian youth for change? Trudy.
That question is loaded.
It's loaded on several levels.
Exactly. So you want us to go on break and come back for you to you want to think about it?
I mean, so on the one hand, because I'm a citizen and I have my biases, I will first load it by saying Nigerian youth is ready for change. But then I would also say on a neutral, if we're trying to look at it on change as a neutral word, the Nigerian is ready for a change in the speed and the consensuousness with which government addresses its responsibility.
Okay. Let me cut you in there. Okay. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back to continue the conversation tonight. Join us again.